Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nimhauser. You can find me on all the places, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, at Hawk Blogger. And on Tuesdays, at least as many times as we can make it work, it's going to be a Hasselbeck Tuesday. We're going to start off the day with Matt Hasselbeck here, and then we're going to finish off the day with Annabelle Hasselbeck and the Seahawks Collective at 5. So lots of good Hasselbeck time. And Matt, man, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday?
What's up? Good morning. I like the mornings. Yeah, it's funny. I'm just Coach Matt around here. I'm coaching high school football, and my brother Tim is the head coach, and my dad Don last year was one of our tight ends coaches. So he was Coach Don. I was just Coach Matt, and then my brother gets to be Coach Hasselbeck. And we look similar. So the kids walk around and they're like, "Can you find Coach Hasselbeck for me?" I'm just Coach Matt. Hey, Coach Matt, what's up?
So, Matt, AB kind of outed you on our show, the Seahawks Collective last week. She said that you were giving her makeup advice. Is this true?
No, I don't. Here's what the truth is. I was asking for makeup advice.
Okay.
She heard it as I was giving advice, and I was like asking. Listen, When I was at ESPN, you have there's makeup artists and all this. They don't want shine on your head. It's like the kiss of death, especially for a bald guy. But everybody has their own like little thing. I don't want to out people at the Get Up studio, who uses Just for Men. There's a lot of people that should be gray that are not gray. Yeah. They got these big buckets of makeup. Like I had no hair and makeup. I just had makeup. And so I had all this, I think it was MAC product, 35, this, that, and the other. I have no idea what any of it means. I get these brushes and I'm like, okay, I need a little tutorial. I need a little help. I don't know. It's sort of funny. Like I grew up as a girl dad, or like as a, my two oldest are girls. And I know how to do a French braid and stuff like that. But no one ever taught me about like the makeup. I had no idea. So, luckily those days are over. I don't need to do that anymore. But
never say never.
Sunscreen, just sunscreen.
Hey man, there's a lot of people making all sorts of money in the makeup industry. Maybe the Hasselbeck line is just around the corner. You never know.
You do know. The answer is no. Not for me. Eye black. That was my thing. I like eye black.
There's some pretty good eye black going on. Before we get into all the football stuff, we got some great stuff to talk about this week. Let's talk about one of the reasons you're going to be with us all season. Charity is an important part of what we've done here with Hawk Blogger. Over $300,000 donated over the years, and going to donate more this year. I know it's important to you too. So what's going to be the charity that you kind of dedicate this to?
Yeah. So I'll give you the credit here too, because like you had said, hey, you want to come on the show sometime, and like, hey, I'd love to have you as much as you want. And you said, hey, I'll pay you. And I was like, oh, I don't know if it's going to fit in my schedule or whatever. And you were like, well, we could do this for charity too. And then I don't know why that motivated me so much. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool thing. Like no one's ever said that to me. So, so I would love for, these appearances to support, 100% support Team Impact. It's an organization that's somewhat newer. Wasn't around when I was in college, but basically I think of it like what I experienced with like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where kids who are, battling something serious health-wise get to come and be a part of like the team for a day. But what Team Impact, how that's different is it's not just for a day. It's not a photo op. It's not just like a short-term thing. You truly are drafted onto the team. You're recruited onto the team. You sign a national letter of intent kind of deal, and you're on that team throughout the season. And maybe even multiple seasons. And so I've just seen it work in such an incredible way in so many student athletes. Sometimes you're having like an amazing season and you're seeing, someone that's going through something that's a little tougher, and it gives you a little bit of perspective. Other times you're on the bench and you're feeling like, hey, I feel like I should complain right now. And then you have a teammate or someone that's going through something. It's like, it's almost impossible for me to be, ungrateful for my current situation. So I think it's a wonderful organization, and they're doing great things on college campuses. And I'm trying to get them to push all the way out to the Pacific Northwest a little bit more. And so hopefully this helps that happen.
Love it. And happy to support, and appreciate you spending time with us. So one of the things we were going to talk about obviously is stuff around the NFL, but everyone's dying to hear, you saw the game the Seahawks played week 1 against the 49ers. What were your impressions, Matt? What'd you walk away with?
Not surprised. Not surprised. Listen, I think the Seahawks can win this division this year, but I wasn't confident they were going to win this game. There's something about the Niners. There's something about Brock Purdy, like unfazed. I talked about it last time I was on the show. He's unfazed about going into Seattle. Sometimes there's a little too much red in that stadium for me in that game. It's a rivalry game. We talked about the T.O. Sharpie game. We talked about. I mean, listen, like there's so many games that replay and so many matchups. It's a pick'em game, like the rivalry, and that's really what it was. Who's going to make the play at the moment of truth? It looked like with special teams, the Seahawks were like, okay, that's going to be the intangible that takes it over. But no, it was some random dude mossing one of our best players and plays like that. Us going down to score and then we lose the ball. Like it just things that I don't think will happen throughout the course of the season. I think like these things will be corrected. I think we'll make the moment of truth plays more than the opponent in our division at least, but that's not what happened on Sunday. It's on Sunday. The 49ers went in there and they behaved like they were the home team at times. And that's got to change. That's got to change.
What did you give me something that you liked from the Seahawks in this game, and give me something that maybe you didn't like?
Well, I love the special teams because you get so like as a quarterback, especially you get so locked in on like offense. Like here's what we got to do. And you don't even know what the defense's plan is, but like you see it because when you're not going, they're going. And so like you're seeing it. But special teams is this like extra credit bonus. We can win or lose a game there, but it's really just like as a quarterback, I don't know. It's like you're just banking on it. You're banking on us making our kicks, and you're banking on some kind of play. Like I remember it was 05 where we couldn't beat the Rams. And like there was just this team that we couldn't beat in 04. They beat us 3 times. We won the division, but they beat us 3 times, once in the playoffs. And the next year, 05, it was our long snapper, JP Darsh, who barely spoke great English at the time, comes up with a amazing fumble recovery in St. Louis. And I just remember like Mike Holmgren, like in the post game, like with the team, he could have mentioned all these great plays from the game. And he was like, merci beaucoup, JP. Like that's the kind of thing that's going to propel us from good to great, from beating a team that maybe we wouldn't otherwise beat. So I thought special teams that was a huge, huge positive for me.
All right. And maybe something that you didn't like as much.
Well, I don't want to focus on things that are like super obvious. I mean, because it wasn't just one thing. And I think Mike Macdonald probably even said that, it's kind of his job to do like damage control and like, hey, let's get back to reality check here. Like we didn't lose the game because of one play or the other. Mm-hmm. But I would say just like from my lens, how I like to look at things, from the quarterback position, the fumble, I'm not necessarily putting it on Sam. I'm not at all. But how you coach in a quarterback room, like you look in the mirror and say, what could we have done differently? And, I've heard people that I really respect, like Brock Heward, say like, hey, you got to feel that rush. And like, yeah, that I agree with that. I think like even a more detailed way that I would say, like, we all as quarterbacks have bad habits. And, one thing is like when you drop the ball a little bit too low. And like, so like for me, like when the bottom of the ball was below the 8 in my number, like the ball's too low. And so like it doesn't bite you till it bites you. And so I think that's probably an example of, you're going to play great pass rushers. It's going to happen. And you're in a ball control offense. So I think if we could just get a little bit more efficient, if I'm just critiquing, and we do this in a win or a loss, just like that dip down motion, and it's like, it's not the most efficient thing. So, and listen, I had a lot of bad habits. I didn't have 2 hands on the ball. Jim Zorn was all over me on that. All over me. So like you work on all these different things, but I just think the tip of the ball dropping down below your number, you're making it harder on the guys around you in the pocket. And that's an area that I think, if you look at the quarterback room, like we got to do that better.
Interesting to hear. And Matt, I'm curious, obviously you played the position, you're an OC now. When you look at how Sam Darnold played overall and what they were asking of him, what did you think of his game? What did you think of the way the game was called?
Yeah, I think he's great. Like I don't think there's like a big shift like, oh wow, this was a bad thing. Like I think we're on track, but there is something to coming together and gelling. Ironically, like the offense that Seattle wants to be is what we saw with San Francisco. Like, and I think you hear Mike Macdonald even talking about it. Like, we need to run the ball more, and definitely we need to use play action more. And then we need to be successful with it. Like, that's a big part of how he's going to solve the offensive line problem of last year. We're going to run it more. People, like, I used to work with Rex Ryan. He'd say this all the time. You can't get a sack on a running play. And another thing is true. You don't use your pass rush move when you feel the guy fire off with a run block. Some of the best pass protection plays are when the offensive line is told by the coach, fire out and block it exactly like it's a run. If anything bad happens, that's on us. It's not on you. Just fire out. And what happens is the D line, they're trained. They feel a run block. They sit in their gap. They don't use their swim move. You're not allowed to spin on a running play. You're not allowed to swim a lot of times on a running play. So I think calling those runs, and listen, you go back to last year, Mike Macdonald at halftime said, this isn't what I want. I want our offense to run the ball more. And I think we're still kind of getting there. And then obviously, spreading the ball around to other people, other receivers is going to be really, really important for this team to have success going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned Mike Macdonald, and I asked him a couple things yesterday. I want to play some sound for you. I asked him the first question, and you'll see it. Mike's not in a mood to really have many conversations after that game. And the first thing I asked him, though, is they only had one play action attempt in this game, pass attempt, and they were in shotgun about 62% of the time, which isn't a ton, but it felt like there wasn't as much under center. And in fact, they were much more effective under center. So I was like, was this really the fastball that you intended to throw? Was this what you wanted to do? And this is what Mike said to that question.
Yeah, we need to action more. We need more movement. So we'll call it and we'll execute it when called.
Quick one there, Matt. And
what he means by movement is like moving the pocket. So what he means by movement is the quarterback, in drop back passing, you're going to be about 7.5 to 9.5 yards behind the center on a drop back pass. And movement plays, there's literally a tab in your playbook, or now on their iPad, but in my day, it was on in the playbook. There's a whole movement tab of, it could be a sprint out. It could be a fake left roll right, a fake right roll left, but like, you're not on your spot. And that's what's hard for a defense. And he knows it because that's the lens that he sees it through. And sometimes what happens, you get these big call sheets, like you don't even know. Like that question that you asked, I'm not sure if like sometimes you get so deep in the weeds in your call sheet, like you don't even realize that. You're like, oh shoot, interesting. So those are the kind of things you look back and study and you say, okay, I'm gonna make a mental note to myself on this. 2 movement plays a quarter, 1 deep shot a quarter. We want to end the day with 4 attempts, back them off, stuff like that. And that's, they'll gel, they'll figure it out. They'll come together on that.
Yeah, it was really kind of confusing to watch because having watched in practices through training camp and OTAs, almost everything's under center, bootleg, action off. It looks like what you said on San Francisco, that they were doing quite a bit. And to see it that rarely was odd. And I asked him another question about outside zone, which is, what they like. The first thing that Clint Kubiak said when they got here is they're going to be an outside zone team, but they only ran outside the tackles like 50% of the time. And here's what Mike said when, I asked him about that.
I don't want to disclose like our trade, our strategy there on what we had up and what we didn't, but say this, when we ran it, I thought it was effective. So that's what we are. We're an outside zone team with inside zone and gap complements, and that's what we're going to be.
So
he's angry.
Right. Tell me why you say that and what you think he's angry about.
Well, he's frustrated, but I understand what happens. Like, you advertise, hey, we're an outside zone team. We're an outside zone team. We're going to use a fullback. We're going to be under center. We're going to run the ball. Like, so what do you think their doing defensively. They're not just like twiddling their thumbs. They have a plan to stop that. There's ways to stop that. And so as a play caller, you say like, oh, okay, if they want to do this, then, we're not going to be a huge outside zone team today. We're going to surprise them. We're going to trick them, with our compliments. And it's like, that's the cat and mouse game a little bit. You dictate your will on somebody and say, hey, deal with it. Or you say like, oh, you're going to do that. We can do this. And both are fine. I mentioned, I think before, we were trying to be an outside zone team when Pete Carroll first came to Seattle. It was different than what we had been. We'd been a really like a man blocking scheme. Max Strong's on your linebacker. It's coming. We know it's coming. We're good with it. Are you? That was our mindset. We go to a zone scheme and Marshawn Lynch is like, I love power. I love power. I love power. It was just a change up. It was like every 11th run is power. And we're going to keep, we're going to use outside zone and naked bootlegs or inside zone and play action. Those are kind of like to simplify it. And so, yeah, this is, he said, I don't want to disclose too much, but you see the Niners do it. You see the Niners do it. And it's sometimes outside zone is like a little bit like elephants on a parade. And then you're looking for one crack of daylight and it's one cut, get downhill. Yeah, I think looking back, that's not necessarily why they lost, but they're probably going to self-scout themselves and say, hey, you know what? We have to stick with it. Like, we got to just stick with it. If we believe in it, it's what we're going to hang our hat on. Let's just stick with it. That's what we'll do.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because it feels, when I've talked to Mike before, he often uses the phrase, we want to throw our fastballs, obviously meaning like we want to do what we're good at. We're going to do that as often as possible. But then if the defense is giving you, in this case, a look, which is essentially like, no way, don't do that. You can do anything else. We're going to make you left-handed, right? We're going to make you brush your teeth with the opposite hand, right? Where do you fall as a play caller and as a player on, do you just say, I don't care what you're doing, we're going to go with what we are, versus no, we're going to take the weakness that you're exposing and maybe not do what we're best at, but maybe attack the weakness of the defense? How do you kind of make that decision?
I think you just, at the end of the day, need positive plays. And, some of the best coaches that I had when I played in like that kind of an outside zone scheme play, they would say things to me like, hey, we're going to use a movement play here as an example. And I don't need a 13 to 23 yard gain here. I need a 6-yard gain. Like, we're just keeping them honest. And so you just got to do enough things to keep them honest so that you can continue to be who you want to be. And, there's a lot of teams, a lot of great offenses in the NFL that play this exact style of offense. It's the same playbook. It's the same play calls. It's the same strategy of how we're going to get players. You see the Vikings using it and the Green Bay Packers using it and the 49ers and the Rams and a bunch of different teams. And so they do a great job. And I think like ultimately it's shifts and motions and eye distractions and smoke and mirrors. And then at the end of the day, ready, set, hut, it's still our bread and butter plays. And I think that's probably where the self-scout will come in and say, hey, you know what? We got to maybe get our receivers involved, maybe different position groups involved, but we just got to stick to this. And with all that, if they just made like one play better on offense and one play better on defense, like they win the game, and we're not even like really focused on it. So it's a game of inches that way. But I think if everybody moves like, 2% better, individually, and then as a group, you're just like unrecognizably better in week 2.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's helped shape my perspective over time, right or wrong, is I remember the 2005 team, and when it was 3rd and short, every single person in the stadium knew what was going to happen. You were going to run to the left behind those 2 linemen and you're going to get a first down. I think during that season, you guys were pretty much 100% conversion on short yardage plays. And a lot of it was just running behind those guys. There's obviously a lot of other examples of this, but you think about the tush push now, like everybody knows what's coming. It feels like the true great offenses do what they're going to do, and they dictate to the defense independent of how many players the defense dedicates to trying to take that away, versus being a team that is super adaptable.
Well, can I just add on that? Like,
Yeah.
there's detail even in that, like in zone team or man team or whatever. Like some guys are good at reaching. Like we would run left because, Walt and Hutch were great. They were road graders. Like they were great. But really another sneaky thing about that is our center and our right guard were just quick. They weren't like the hugest guys. They were very, very quick on a backside cutoff. And then, a sneaky thing that we would do, we would put Ryan Hannum, our backup tight end in a lot of times. He was the best cut block tight end that we had. He played at like Northern Iowa or somewhere, and he was like great at cut blocks. And then, running weak or running strong, you'd run strong to a guy like Daryl Jackson, not necessarily a great blocker. You'd run weak at a guy like Joe Jaravicius, who now has a corner on him. He goes and gets the free safety that's coming down. And now we have our running back, Sean Alexander, on your corner. So, like, yes, it was because we're running against these two linemen. So, like, to say it in today's verbiage, we need to know in short yardage, are we best running left or right based on maybe sometimes who's backside on that backside cutoff? Because on short yardage, they're very usually slanting inside. So, there's a lot of things that go into all of that stuff, personnel wise, how we can use our fullbacks in the passing game, I think is going to be something that changes quite a bit. That needs to be a huge weapon for us this year to keep people honest. So there's a lot of detail that goes to it. And I thought creativity, to your point on the fake tush push thing, that was good to see because that just means there's a lot more coming.
Yeah, and like another question, I'm probably not gonna play this sound for you, but I asked Coach about this as well as early downs strategically. I know you think about this as a play call.
Play the sound. I'm dying to hear it.
You're dying to hear it. All right, so I'll tell you. I'll tell you the setup, which is the Seahawks were the second to least likely to pass the ball on early downs after week 1. Like they ran the ball most often on early downs, first and second down. Taken away at end of the half, kind of 2-minute drill stuff, right? But they were super efficient when they passed on those early downs. And so my question to Mike was, how do you kind of make that decision between the identity you're trying to set as a running team, which, by the way, the Lions, the Ravens, they're the other teams that are down there as heavy run teams, versus passing when people don't expect you to? And this is what Coach said to that question.
Well, that's the magic, right? It's just how do you make it come together? A lot of it's based off of what you have going into the plan and how you feel like teams are playing you and what you're doing well and what you have up. So, again, it's a game-to-game thing, but yeah, we'll look. I mean, those are the things that we're looking at on how to improve and how to move forward from here.
Right. Those are the things we're looking at to improve. What do you think he means by that?
Well, you got to stick, like there's a lot of things that can be distractions on that. Like, what you want to do, but sometimes there's two things that happen. Sometimes the defense has a great player that you're trying to neutralize. So maybe I'm trying to neutralize a guy who's great on third down, and the way to do it is to make him do something he doesn't want to do on first and second down. Make him buckle his chin strap. Maybe you're cutting him 2 inches above the patella and just making it a long day for him. Like, hey, do you really want to do this today? Like, you know how much money you're going to make this season? Is today the day you want to put it all on the line? Like, you're setting that up because of how great a player is as a pass rusher. That's a real thing. There's another thing that happens is that they could have a stiff on their team, especially week 1, where a lot of young guys who've never played and they maybe don't want to guarantee a veteran's contract. So they cut a good player to hope and cross their fingers on a different player. And you can either run at that guy or throw at that guy. And he's a fish. They would call him a jag, just a guy. He's just a guy. Like, we can pick on this dude. So, like, sometimes you can get a little bit distracted with one of those two things and you forget what you really globally want to be. And, I really think, like, sometimes when reporters, stat people, whoever give coaches like a little tendency on themselves, they're like, oh, really? Like, they don't know. Like, they really don't know because it's kind of a small sample size to them. And they know that they had 350 plays in the game plan, but they don't remember, like, okay, well, they don't know exactly like what didn't we call? Man, it feels like we called that. We practiced it all week. Like, what actually got called? What did we expose to the public? So I think that just goes into like the self-evaluation, like he's talking about, kind of like you're talking about too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating tug of war between identity and maybe efficiency. And that's going to be something they're going to have to play with. A couple more questions for Matt Hasselbeck before we let you get on with your coaching duties. So
I'm trying to do the same thing, by the way. All these problems that they're talking about, like it's I'm on Huddle and they give me the stats. Be like I think last week we were 61% run. I was like 61% run. The first 9 plays were passes. Like, how is that even true? But like, the game goes a certain way and you're trying to win it at the end of the game and you're trying to like hold the ball. But like it's a thing. And what he say is that's the magic. Is that what he said? Like,
yes,
he's right.
Well, so I have a question for you on Sam before we turn our attention to the Pittsburgh game. And I know Pittsburgh's probably a tough team to talk about, but we will.
Soon.
We will do it. It's still too soon. So I couldn't help but feel like, so almost all the passes, like over half their passes were under 2.5 seconds, a lot of screen game, and they were the worst quick game team in the NFL this for 1 week, right? That they literally lost almost a point per play via advanced metrics EPA by doing that. It felt like they kind of had some handcuffs on Sam. And that last drive where they went down, it felt like that was a little bit more like, okay, we know we got to pass. And Sam looked reasonably good in that scenario. Do you feel like they are trying to protect him? Do you feel like they can let the reins go a little bit more? Like, I know it's just one game, but curious how you thought of the way they called it around him.
I don't think it's about the quarterback, and that goes for the Seahawks or any team. Like when you call passes like that, screens, quick game, it's about the O-line. It's about trying to help them out. You have respect for who they have as a pass rusher. And that's a little bit the identity piece that I think Mike Macdonald was talking about last year. Like what the first game of the year, I might screw this up, but I feel like it was like an interception and 2 safeties or something crazy, or maybe 2 interceptions and it was nuts.
2 safeties for sure.
Yeah. So but that never happens if you're not putting yourself in position for it to happen. And that's not about the quarterback. That's not because they didn't trust Geno Smith. No, they didn't trust the offensive line against whoever the pass rushers were. That's the facts. And so you're looking for, that's why people like to start with a run. We would get our first 15 the night before the game, all the time. And if it was ever really going to be a pass, they wouldn't tell us. They would always say, oh, it's a run. We're firing out, because they wanted the O-line to get a good night's sleep. All of them. I don't care who you were. Walter Jones. He did not want a 7-step drop. Hey, let me get into the fight with this guy. Let me spar a little bit before he wants to do his little dance. Let me be an O-lineman. So no, I don't necessarily think that it might feel super conservative, and maybe some of it is hey, we don't have the blue chip wide receivers everywhere like other teams do, but a lot of times it's really more about pass protection.
All right, so let's turn our attention to week 2. Seahawks travel to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that team name is spelled differently up in the Northwest. So
it's crazy. I mean, I could tell you so many Steelers stories.
It's
amazing how many
it's
just amazing how many friends I have now that are part of the Steelers organization, or it's just really that team really I don't think my family still to this day eats Heinz ketchup. We just refuse, absolutely refuse. I do like that song "Renegade" by Styx. That they're never gonna steal that from me, but no, a lot of crazy. I mean, listen, my son Henry was through the recruiting process. He plays quarterback at UCLA, but he was good. I mean, he was strongly considering Pittsburgh. They were one of his first offers, and we were spending a lot of time in Pittsburgh. And I was like, really, God? Really? We're gonna be spending the next 5 years in Pittsburgh? Oh, sense of humor. But anyway, sorry about week 2. Let's go.
I love it.
Well, this would be a great one to get a bad taste out of our mouth, right? Beat Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. I mean,
it's a rough place to play, for sure. I just finished watching the Steelers-Jets game in totality, and I had some thoughts, but I'm curious, what was your impression of that game?
That was the best game of all of week 1 until the Sunday night game happened. It was an incredible game. And, I've made the joke. It was kind of like, people who go back to their high school reunion and they want to look their best for whoever their old flame was. And hey, I was the one that got away. That's what I felt like both quarterbacks did. They were they were so good. Justin Fields was awesome. Aaron Rodgers was great. It was that kind of a game. I think there's some things as we're going to play them this is not the old Aaron Rodgers. He is really amazing at the line of scrimmage with his eyes, with his head, with his arm, but he does not have that mobility, escapability that he once had. And I think, unlike last year, I think he now knows that. But at the same time, that team is a team that uses movement plays better than anybody. Look what Arthur Smith did in that game. If you want to go rewatch that, he gets off his spot. So what Mike's talking about with movement plays, they're changing the launch point of where the quarterback is. And that's why it doesn't have to be at 2.5 seconds all the time. It can be at 2.9 seconds. It can be at 3.1 because that's within the design of the play. And they don't need him to, be escapable. They just need him to, move a little, which he certainly can still do that. That was how they got their big plays. And it feeds into everything that they're trying to do in terms of the Arthur Smith, like run the damn ball. They kind of did the same thing, like all offseason. Oh, we're going to run the ball. And it was the play action movement game that got them their big plays.
Yeah, a great call out. I thought Justin Fields, that was maybe his best game. I mean, he was really impressive in that one. And Aaron Rodgers, it was fine. It was interesting. They did opposite the Seahawks, a lot of quick game as well. But when they were doing screen passes, they were effective. They were very good.
But there's something too, like turning the double play. Like Aaron Rodgers has a really, really quick release. Like, we were mentioning earlier, like that dude and everyone's getting off on the snap count. Like he uses his snap count as good as anybody ever of all time. And so like there's, it's a game of inches. How you measure good quick game on screens and stuff like that. You pause the tape when the guy catches the ball. If there's 5 yards of separation between me and the closest person that can make the tackle, I, as a quarterback, turn the double play in an efficient enough way, or it was a good enough play call. But if I'm like catching and both my feet are still on the ground while the ball's in my hand, I haven't sort of started my drop already, and I'm like taking a slow delivery, or I'm kind of making sure it's no, you're going to get like a lame kind of like, 2-yard game, like that's just what's going to happen. So there's an art to these little like slingy sidearm throws. Like really that's what it is. It's as a catcher, throwing it down to first, or, guy steals, how quick can you get it out of your glove? Like there's an art to that. And Aaron's really, really good at kind of, being the dealer, so to speak.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say and let you go, Matt, is I was surprised by how much the Steelers defense gave up in terms of rushing yards. I'm used to that front just being impenetrable. Yeah. And they were giving up a lot of yards to a zone running team.
Yeah, that's true. Now, the only thing that we didn't talk about is they have some serious weapons at wide receiver too. Like, and that's a thing. That's a real thing. And I think one of the weapons that we probably should just mention, because who he is, DK, DK Metcalf. And I thought this was a great thing that Aaron Rodgers did. Like he gets a lot of hate and like a lot in the media, like people acted like he's like the poison that Tyreek Hill is. Like he's not. He's really, his teammates like him a lot. DK Metcalf drops an easy catch, like a very simple catch coming across would have been a big play. And everyone thinks that Aaron Rodgers is going to roll his eyes and, you're never getting the ball again. It's not at all what happened. He went right back to him the very next play. And like those are like little intangible things. Like I'm sure the read wasn't to go right back to him the very next play, but like he understands, hey, DK, I need you. And I know what you can be. And like, I got to keep you in this fight. Like I got to get you another touch. I got to get you going. And like, there's an art when you play quarterback, there's an art to making sure that everyone gets fed just a little bit. Everyone gets in a rhythm of the game, and certain guys need it more than others. And DK, I think, is one of those guys and needs to feel a part of the game in one way or the other. And I think after that moment, you saw him really impressive in the passing game, impressive as a blocker down the field. So that's something to watch. I think he's going to have a really good season, and they got weapons all around too. So it's a good team this year.
Matt, thank you as always for your time. Excited to partner with you with Team Impact this year. And I want to make sure you have enough time to give AB any makeup tips that she needs before the show tonight. So go to it.
She'll probably just screen my call if she's smart. Like I'm not the person for that. No.
All right.
Have fun on the show tonight, though. It'll be good. It's the first thing I do when I get home from practice. I turn it on. So
I love it. Yeah. Seahawks Collective, 5 p.m. Pacific time tonight with AB Hasselbeck as our host. All right, man. Matt Hasselbeck this morning. Take care, and good luck for you this week.
Thank you. See you, Brian.
All right. That was Matt Hasselbeck. We'll be with Matt all season. pretty much every week where time allows, and that is an amazing gift for all of us to be able to hear his insights. I think he's as good as it gets in this stuff, and some interesting takes from Matt about a lot of what we saw. And I think his note about Sam Darnold having the ball too low on that play was something I was curious about, because quarterbacks are coached to have it up at like at least shoulder level when they're in that pocket, and it was down at his waist. And I don't think that fumble happens if he's got it in the right position, but you know what? Like, it happened. It happened. I also thought his note about that the quick game from his perspective is less about protecting the quarterback and more about the offensive line. Also interesting, or at least about the fact that they had concerns about their ability to hold up in pass protection against a guy like Nick Bosa, most likely, which is valid. So a lot of good stuff from Matt there, and we've got a bunch more to get to. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what else went down in this press conference with Mike Macdonald yesterday. It was a pretty big newsy press conference from my perspective. Before we get to that, let me just remind you all, take advantage of the Sleeper app if you haven't already. Great place to check on your fantasy, check on who's doing what in the NFL, Major League Baseball, soon enough, the NBA. It's real-time chat where you can engage with other users, talk about individual plays, performances, keep your squad together. And beyond that, I mean, if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, so let me get one thing to you guys. We are closing in on 25,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Great to get there. As you saw in the post-game show and in my show yesterday morning, there are going to be times where I limit chat to only people that are subscribers, and I will limit it to people who've been subscribers for a certain amount of time, because I don't want 49ers fans to invade chat just for that moment, or become subscribers for a couple of minutes and then bow out. So make sure you're a subscriber, especially if you want to participate in the chat on the show, which is one of the fun parts. Make sure you follow us everywhere: TikTok, Instagram. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I would 100% appreciate it. If you're not going to leave a 5-star review, let me know why, and I'm happy to get some feedback and see what we can do about it. All right. So some of the news that came out of that press conference yesterday. This was an interesting one, and I played you some of it already. Let me play you some more. So this was a question. Corbin Smith, you're going to hear him asking Mike Macdonald about Josh Jobe. And the interesting thing here is, as Corbin's like reading off how well Josh Jobe played, you'll hear Mike Macdonald add to it, say, well, you missed something that he did, and then hear his comments about Jobe as he goes on. So Corbin's kind of reading off his stats. Here, Mike, interrupt here.
One catch for 1 yard. What'd you see from the way that he had a pick? What'd you see from him out there with that extended playing time having to be thrown in there?
Josh is ready to go. He's always going to be a big part of the game plan. He's competing for more snaps, and I thought he played a tremendous football game. Played physical, played smart, played disciplined, finished his plays right. I thought he played a great game.
So competing for more snaps. That was the ding, 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 like bell heard. And, Mike, for Mike to say that in the press, he's not happy about that Riq Woolen performance. And I think it's pretty clear. It was asked a little bit later. I think this was Bob Condotta that asked this question. Well, you said he's competing for snaps, but at what spot? Which side? And here's what Mike said to that.
That corner.
Yeah. No,
He's competing at corner. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that corner.
Or like at Riq's side, or
Either side. I mean, you go out and you produce. why would we not play you?
What did you?
Oh man. So this is Mike after a loss where he's not happy. He is not gonna he's not gonna give any more than he has to give. And I think this year, I mean, I could see folks were not too comfortable asking him questions. It's not going to stop me from asking questions. I might get yelled at, but I'm just going to keep asking questions. But I think Mike actually gave some reasonably good answers. He's just not doing it with a smile on his face, and he's not gonna wax poetic about it. And in this case, he basically just is telling us very clearly what I'm sure the team is seeing on the field, which is Josh Jobe is, I think he's going to take those snaps. So, this is a bit of a surprise to me that after 1 week, they're ready to take Jobe from third corner to second corner, depending on how you want to look at it. Now, the actual mechanical differences here might be less pronounced than people would think. I don't think this means that Riq Woolen's getting benched. I think Riq Woolen played, I'll look it up. I think he played like 75 snaps in the first. Oh, here it is. Riq Woolen played 76 snaps in this game against 49ers. Josh Jobe played 61. Now, why did he have fewer snaps than Riq Woolen? Because there are some times where they're playing base defense where they only have two cornerbacks on the field. And in that case, it was Riq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. Now, what the coach is opening the door for, and maybe already deciding on, is Jobe would be the guy in base defense opposite of Devin Witherspoon. And what that would mean is that when they get to nickel, which is still the majority of the time, 61 of 76 snaps in the first game were nickel, then Riq Woolen likely comes back on the field as the outside corner opposite Jobe. Devin Witherspoon moves inside. So this isn't necessarily a titanic or tectonic shift, I would say, but it is a really interesting move to consider making this quickly. I like Josh Jobe. I think he's been part of what's made this defense more physical, more effective. I think he's been a very good third corner. I don't think he's been elite. And all that said, I'm not convinced Josh Jobe is a better cornerback over the course of a full game than Riq Woolen. So I know a lot of people are going to hate that take. Everyone's like, Riq Woolen, if we never see him again, that's too soon. I'm not of that mind. I still think Riq Woolen is one of the most talented cornerbacks in football. And for the majority of a game, you are able to do things and that you can't otherwise without a player like him, and that he makes a lot of plays you don't see in coverage that are showing up in advanced metrics in terms of the way he has been able to hold down receivers over time. But he has made some absolute team breaking mistakes. And so in that situation, like Josh Jobe, what he is much more physical. You know, I think he's mentality wise much more matches what Mike Macdonald sees. Like he's much closer to Marlon Humphrey at cornerback than Riq Woolen will ever be. And this is part of why, Brady Henderson's been pretty consistent. He does not think Riq Woolen is going to be extended by the Seahawks. And this is further evidence that they're just not that committed. If they were super committed to Riq Woolen, they would not, after one game, where he made some plays and made some other bad plays, they would not essentially demote him. They would be looking for ways to increase his confidence. This feels like a step down that path of we're going to be less dependent on you. And it also feels like I wouldn't be shocked if Shaquille Griffin, Darian Kendrick, maybe Nehemiah Pritchett, I don't know if they even start looking for chances for those guys to push for snaps. So I think this is pretty meaningful news after just one game. And it doesn't stop there. It wasn't just that position. So he had talked earlier in the press conference, I'm not going to play this, but about Tyrese Knight. And it wasn't a glowing review. He's like, hey, Tyrese is coming back from injury and, he's still recovering. And, we're hoping that he will essentially play better down the road. But this was a question about Drake Thomas. And here's what the coach said there.
More Drake playing, was that more a pitch count or just?
The question here was from Masvita saying, was this Drake Thomas playing? Was this more about pitch count or more about competition? And you're going to hear Mike very quickly answer.
Competition, how
both.
the game evolved.
Both. That is what Mike said there. Is it about pitch count or competition? Both. So the pitch count part is, yes, Tyrese is coming back from injury and you expect that. The competition that's to me as much about Drake Thomas as it is about Tyrese Knight. There are folks that are not like super sold on Drake Thomas. I can't say I've like seen enough to where I'm like, yeah, this guy is absolutely your better option at starting backer. But I will say this guy came back from injury late last season in training camp to the point where it seemed really tough for him to even make the roster. And he made the 53. That was surprising because Mike Macdonald had no prior history with Drake Thomas, and Mike Macdonald cares a lot about that linebacker position. He's obviously done enough evaluation to think at that point, Drake Thomas is the guy we want around. Then you go into the offseason and everyone's like, you got Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, but then after them, you've got Patrick O'Connell and Drake Thomas and maybe Jamie Sheriff. Feels like you need to make a move there. They don't. And they don't draft one. They don't sign one in free agency. Then you go to the 53-man roster this year. Patty O'Connell had been getting almost all the snaps when Tyrese Knight was out next to Ernest Jones. Sorry, I think Patty O'Connell was getting a lot of the snaps when Ernest Jones was out, and then also was getting a lot of snaps even when he came back and Tyrese Knight was out. But he doesn't make the 53. Who does? Drake Thomas. So I think there's a lot of evidence to point to the fact that Mike Macdonald likes what he sees from Drake Thomas. And this may be as much about that he's interested in seeing what he can do on the field as anything else. Because remember last year, he would talk about Kobe Bryant. He would talk about Josh Jobe as guys that were guys he was eager to kind of see on the field. And what did they do? They found a way to get Kobe Bryant on the field, even though they had 3 other safeties. And eventually he stole that job from Rayshawn Jenkins. Similarly, Josh Jobe and Trey Brown. So this may be something to really watch, this week and see what Drake Thomas has to offer. From a PFF grade perspective, PFF liked what Drake Thomas did more than what Tyrese Knight did. And Tyrese Knight looked a little slow. He was beaten on some pass plays. And, that's the rough part is that injury? Is that talent? We're going to find out. A couple other things I want to play for you. There was a question about how he felt like the defense performed on third downs where the 49ers were converted 50% of their first downs. Here is what the coach said about that.
First thing is they're too short. We need to create longer third downs. And no matter the situation, rush and coverage have to work together better. And so be a point of emphasis moving forward.
So we talked about this a little bit yesterday that the 49ers, I think their average third down distance was about 5.7 yards. For what it's worth, the Seahawks was about 6. So it wasn't a huge difference between the two teams. But what I like there from the coach is, if you look at third downs, the distribution of conversion rate by distance is very clear. It's very linear. Like the longer you have to go, the less likely. It doesn't matter which defense you are. It is just always a truism that the longer you have to go, the less likely you are to convert. And the way you get those longer third downs is not just early down run defense, which I think is a key part of it for sure. And if you don't do that, then nothing else matters because you'll just be run on till it's third and short, or you don't even have third downs. But the other part of it, I think, and you heard him talk about rush and coverage in unison. I think that they have got to get first and second down sacks. I think they've got to get some negative plays on early downs. I think DeMarcus Lawrence is part of that calculation. I think Byron Murphy is part of that. I think obviously Leonard Williams, all that is worth thinking about. And I think Mike Macdonald, in terms of when they choose to blitz, remember, the Seahawks had an 83% pressure rate when they blitzed against the 49ers. They did it, I think, only like 6 times, but that might mean that Mike Macdonald is a little more willing to send some pressure early and early downs. And to Matt Hasselbeck's point, Aaron Rodgers is not the mobile guy he was. He was sacked 4 times in this game against the Jets. There were some pressures that Aaron Glenn threw at them and, got home. Their left tackle struggled in this game a decent amount. So there could be some vulnerability there. I'll talk much more about the Steelers in tomorrow's show when we do our tail of the tape first look. But, this is a defense where you got to get them behind the sticks like any defense. And I think that's where Mike Macdonald's like, hey, that's something we've got to figure out now. And going to be something to keep an eye on. Now, one thing before I play one more bit of sound from Mike Macdonald is there was also news. I asked Mike Macdonald whether or not Uchenna Nwosu, Jake Bobo, Riq Woolen have a chance to be back for this game. And he said optimistic. Optimistic on all 3. That surprised me. I wasn't necessarily expecting Chenna back this week. I thought week 3 might be more likely, but he gives you something that other guys don't. I mean, he is probably the best combination of pass rush and rush defense of the 4 edges that you've got on your roster. And having him available, at the very least, that I think is good news. I think Jake Bobo and Riq Woolen, I think they are a bigger part of potentially how they want to run this offense than people may realize. I don't think they're going to be, top pass catchers, but I do think they are a big part of the run blocking. Riq Woolen, from what I was seeing, is a big part of some of the downfield stuff that MVS was supposed to do, but Riq Woolen was the one actually producing. So we'll see where those 3 guys are, but that's something to watch starting Wednesday, tomorrow, when we get practice reports. So the last bit of sound I wanted to play for you is this is Mike Macdonald talking about the pass rush and is it where he wants it to be? This is what he said.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's not where we want it to be. I think we did some good things, some really good things, but we need to be better moving forward. Guys know that, and they're going to do that. We got great guys. They're on it. They're motivated. Again, they play. You guys watched it, or hope you watched it. They play extremely hard, physical. The last play of the game is a great indicator. We got guys throwing their bodies all over the place. Derek Hall made a phenomenal hustle play, tackled the quarterback the right way, and the play just didn't go our way. They're doing it for, what is that, the 78th play of the game? So that tells you who they are.
It's an interesting message there from the coach that, look, Brock Purdy was pressured more than he's ever been pressured in his career. The Seahawks have the number 1 pressure rate of any defense in the NFL. I told you that they even have a higher pressure rate when they blitz. And Mike Macdonald's not happy about it. And he asked at one point, like, how do you define a pressure? And I think this was on the Brock and Salk show. And I think from his perspective, all pressures aren't created equal. He and I, we've talked about that before. I asked him about that last week. And a quarterback hit, moving a quarterback off his spot, and a sack are big. And they only sacked Purdy a few times. And I think from his perspective, they want to get him on the ground. They want the loss of yardage, right? So for him, I think he's a little zero sum in that regard. And I don't think that's the worst thing. When I asked him in this press conference as well how he felt Byron Murphy played on second watch. And he said, basically, he was like, he played the run really well. You know, I think he can do better rushing the passer. And look, I've told you guys all offseason, when I first interviewed Byron, you know, he said he spent the offseason working on pass rush. Adding Dirty's talked about that he's working on pass rush. He's going to get more opportunities. And he didn't have a sack in this game. But I will tell you, when I watched this game for a second time yesterday, a few things stood out to me. So one was that was like a better played game than I think I gave it credit for initially. And it wasn't like I thought they were terrible, but I was so frustrated by the offense not playing the way I expected them to, not necessarily, you know, trouncing the other team, but like even the style was different than I expected, that I was distracted by that. And when I watched it the second time, one of the things that stood out to me was Byron Murphy. You know, I didn't put a clip together, a reel together of his plays, but you know, there was the sack from Julian Love. Byron Murphy gets that sack if Julian Love isn't blitzing, but Julian Love gets that sack because of Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy gets around the center at the snap in an instant. And because he's around the center to the right side, Christian McCaffrey starts to move to that side. Well, actually, it's to the defense's right side, to the offense's left side. So Christian McCaffrey moves to his left to help pick up Byron Murphy, who's beaten the center. Because of that, there is nobody to block Julian Love coming up the middle. You see Christian McCaffrey like move to his left and then try to dive back to his right because he sees Julian Love barreling through the middle of the line. Byron Murphy was a huge part of that play. There were some tackles for loss. Now that's run defense stuff, and so that gets back to Mike. But there was a number of moments where I saw Byron like the guy next to the guy, especially in the first half. And so I was pretty encouraged by what I saw on rewatch of Byron Murphy's performance. It wasn't dominant. It wasn't like, oh my God, anybody could see it. But there was a lot of stuff in there that I thought was pretty encouraging. Some of the other things that stood out for me in that game are probably not what other people would want to hear, but I thought Sam Darnold played pretty well. I mean, I had forgot some of the passes that he completed. He was really pretty efficient and he was accurate. And I think the throws were generally out on time. If I had a criticism of Sam Darnold's play in this game, it was that he seemed so focused on getting rid of the ball quickly and maybe changing this narrative about him of like being slow to release and takes too long and gets sacked because of it, that he was making split-second decisions. And I think it's good to be decisive, but there was a number of times where if he just looked, like if he went through his progression, even to a second or a third progression, there were some guys available. And I thought Cooper Kupp was really bad in this game. He certainly had that drop. That was a big problem. There was definitely a few plays where I could see the ball going to JSN and Cooper Kupp standing open. And it wasn't, including the fumble at the end. But I'm not saying Cooper Kupp played a great game at all, but he wasn't as locked down as I thought he was on first watch. Similarly, I saw Torrey Horton was available to Sam Darnold a few times. He didn't take advantage of him. So that's something that I think would need to change over time. And then like Ernest Jones, I thought was fantastic in this game. I mean, some of the plays he made in the run game, obviously the interception, he looks like he's going to take his game to another level this year, which is really great. Like that's welcome. We need guys to be able to say that about. I definitely still on second watch, like the sequencing, the decisions about when to go shotgun or pistol was confusing to me. Like when they did gun runs versus, under center, I still felt like when they were under center, they were better. And in fact, I asked Derek Gebby on our squad to help me with some data there. And it turns out when the Seahawks were under center, they were more effective. They were basically a scratch EPA team when they were under center. They were a negative 0.27, negative 0.3 EPA per play when they were shotgun. And that was the dominant portion of their plays. 62% was shotgun. Well, that wasn't great. But the thing that was even more stand out about this, and this gets to the play action, they only had 4 pass plays when they were under center, but they were a plus 0.4 EPA per play when they were under center passing. When they were in shotgun passing, it was negative 0.3. That's like over a point per play difference between when you're passing under center, when you're passing shotgun. And I just felt like they didn't do what they they should have been doing, and should have is probably too strong of a phrase for me to be saying as a non-football coach, but they didn't come out to do what I think they've been practicing to do, which is be a under center, outside zone, play action off of that team where everything looks the same. That just wasn't used in this game. And that continued to be a pretty frustrating part of this. The other thing is they showed some real tendencies. They ran the ball 80% of the time when they were under center, 80%. They passed the ball 70% of the time when they were in shotgun. That is too predictable. That is Ryan Grubb-esque. Like, you cannot be that predictable in those situations. And so that, those were some of the things that kind of stood out for me looking at it. And I will say it is interesting to me that so many of the 49ers came out of this game banged up. Obviously, the Seahawks, sounds like Nicky Manwari is going to go on IR with a high ankle sprain. Initially, the coach thought it wasn't. Came back, medical staff told him it was. So he may go on IR. For people wondering about IR, it is 4 games. So he would be gone for a minimum of 4 games, but it's not through the season or through the bye week or anything like that. 4 games, if that's the case. And I think they're still deciding what they're going to do there. But the 49ers come out with, George Kittle's going to be potentially placed on IR. Juwan Jennings, they're going to have a CT scan on his shoulder. Trent Williams came out a little banged up. Brock Purdy may not play with a toe and I think a shoulder. It just, like, this was a super physical game. And ultimately, when I watched it the second time, what my takeaway is, God, these two teams, the defenses played really well. And the 49ers defense, give them credit. Where I was completely wrong was that I expect their defense to be really susceptible to the run, and they weren't. Like those, and it wasn't just Robert Saleh. I think he's a big part of it, but the players, they really were stout against the run. And so one of the things I'm going to be watching for is there's such an expectation difference here. Like, all we had to go on, no one knew what these guys were going to look like with Saleh, with these guys, until you get to see them play. But in like 5 or 6 weeks, we might be like, oh, wait a second. That's a top 10 run defense or a top 5 run defense. And maybe they're a top 10 defense overall. Right now, they're a top 5 defense, but let's see over the course of a few more games. And if it turns out that defense is really, really highly performing, I think the perspective about that game changes. And that's the way when I watched it again, I was like, man, both defenses are playing well. I'm not seeing the offenses being completely terrible. I'm seeing the defenses make a lot of really good plays. And then I'm seeing the Seahawks losing in a way that they really shouldn't be losing. I see them making coaching decisions I didn't like, at least on offense. I also would say that that game really seemed like it was under control for the Seahawks until JSN fumbled. They were ahead. They had just blocked a field goal. They were, I think they were headed toward to take at least a field goal, another field goal tacked on lead. And then Jason fumbles that ball. So, I thought that was a pretty key turning point in this game. There was one other thing that I wanted to share with you guys. Before I do that, we got a good deal back for you. SeatGeek's working with us. So let's talk about that. We're headed towards fall. So I'd love to find some indoor events to attend with my family, which is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and a bunch more. The NFL is officially back. MLB playoffs are around the corner, and the NBA not too far behind. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Those are the best. Red, not quite as good. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you know what? It doesn't really matter if you are a Dua Lipa fan or a Benson Boone guy, or who knows, maybe you're a Tate McRae person, but there are great concerts coming your way. Find them on SeatGeek. And I have a code for you guys. You can use code HawkBlogger10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code HawkBlogger10. Make sure you click on the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks, SeatGeek. Awesome deal. Yeah. Use the link in the description of the video. Get yourself some money off of any concert you want to see, any event. Great deal from SeatGeek, and appreciate the support. So let's talk a little bit more about some NFC West stuff. I just talked to you about the 49ers injury situation. Something that hasn't gotten almost any attention is the Rams, both their starting guards are injured. Steve Avila, their left guard, Kevin Dotson, the right guard, both have ankle sprains and are considered week to week. They play at the Titans in week 2 and against the Eagles in week 3. So we'll see what happens there. Avila didn't finish that game. I think Bo Limmer came in and played relatively well for them, but something to keep an eye on, because Matt Stafford, obviously, the more he gets hit, the more questions there's going to be about how that back holds up. The other thing I'll share is the 49ers signed their right tackle to a deal that almost seems identical to the Seahawks deal for Abe Lucas, 3-year, $45 million extension for Colton McKivitz. I think Abe was 3 years, 46. So both NFC West teams lock up their right tackles for the foreseeable future. I will say another thing on second watch of that game was Trent Williams was not Trent Williams. And I don't know if he's going to ever be Trent Williams again. Derek Hall, I posted some video on my Twitter feed. He walked him back on back-to-back plays. I think Derek Hall played a better game than I realized on second watch, but Trent Williams just looks like a guy who's, certainly toward the tail end. So let me get to some super chats here. Old School Seahawk has given away his 12 Hawk Blogger memberships. Appreciate you, Old School. Thank you for generosity. Make sure you take advantage of these. Turn on gifting on your YouTube account. Just Google it if you don't know how to do that. And then subscribe, comment on the show. All those things give you the best chance for YouTube to pick who gets one of these free memberships. Smokehawk says, if Riq dominates DK, does he win everyone back? Well, we'll talk about this matchup more tomorrow. I watched Riq go against DK in practice for years. And it is a good matchup. They go back and forth, but DK generally won that. DK generally won matchups with everybody in practice. That didn't always translate to the game, but it will be, look, I am not going to jump on the Riq Woolen is enemy number one, public enemy number one side of this. I think Riq Woolen is part of you're your best team if you figure out how to get Riq Woolen playing his best. If he can't, then that's a shame. I'm not going to celebrate it. I'm not going to hate him. I'm not going to go anti Riq Woolen. I just know that the Seahawks will be at their best if he's at his best. And this was not his best. And so I get it. I understand frustration, but that's just not where I'm at. OEL became a YouTube member. Well, welcome, man. Appreciate having you and welcome to the party. And then Smokehawk says, if there are separate offensive defense points per drive, is there separate offensive defense points per drive stat on PFF? I'm not on PFF. That's not where I look for points per drive. There are that I would get that at Pro Football Reference. I can pull that up for you since you gave us a super chat here. Let me pull that up. So the Seahawks, if you're curious, they were 1.3 points per drive, which ranked 23rd in the NFL after this first game. They gave up 1.55 points per drive, which ranked 11th in the NFL just this season. To compare that to last season, they scored 1.89 points per drive and they gave up 1.78. So they were much worse on offense and a decent amount better on defense, at least through 1 week. Small sample size, all of those caveats remain. All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy our time with Matt. I think brings a ton of great knowledge and is also just a great storyteller and fun. So I will see you later tonight, 5 o'clock, Seahawks Collective with Annabelle Hasselbeck and Michael-Sean Dugar. Rob Staten will be on a flight back to the UK. And so we'll miss Rob tonight, but we will be there with AB and Michael-Sean. So see you at 5 o'clock tonight. Until then, have a great rest of your day.